Welcome to episode number 15 or study number 15 in our study of First John, where we are looking at God as life, love, and light. This has been a really good study for us, those of us that are part of Renovatus. We are a small group that is beginning to gather together to begin to start a new church called Renovatus, where it's going to be a church for misfits, dreamers, and the discontent. We are in West Tennessee, specifically in Dyersburg, Tennessee. We'd love to have you be a part. I'll say a little bit more about that at the end. But this is, again, number 15, and we're going to take a look at First John chapter 3, verse 16 through 18. I will read this out of the New American Standard, the Passion, and the Message to kind of give us a little bit more clarity. First John chapter 3, verse 16 through 18. We know love by this. This is how we're going to know love. That he laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for the brethren. But whoever has the world's goods and sees his brother in need and closes his heart against him, how does the love of God abide in him? Little children, let us not love with word or with tongue, but in deed and truth. The Passion. This is how we've discovered love's reality. Jesus sacrificed his life for us. Because of this great love, we should be willing to lay down our lives for one another. If anyone sees a fellow believer in need and has the means to help him, yet shows no pity and closes his heart against him, how is it even possible that God's love lives in him? Beloved children, our love can't be an abstract theory we only talk about, but a way of life demonstrated through our loving deeds. The Message. This is how we've come to understand and experience love. Christ sacrificed his life for us. This is why we ought to live sacrificially for our fellow believers and not just be out for ourselves. If you see some brother or sister in need and have the means to do something about it, but turn a cold shoulder and do nothing, what happens to God's love? It disappears, and you made it disappear. My dear children, let's not just talk about love, let's practice real love. I've said so many different times on these studies that love is the foundational aspect of Christianity. Love is what it's all about. John says throughout this epistle that this is the message you've heard from the beginning. This is the basic message. This is the message that Jesus gave us. Love one another. And I've been a Christian now since I was 12 years old. So we're talking about 40 years of me being a part of the church. And I have been a minister since I felt the call of God at 13, but I became involved in full time ministry. And I've done full time and bivocational ministry all my adult life. And I started in full time ministry when I was 20. I've been around the block a few times. I've heard thousands of sermons. I've been to a lot of conferences, prophecy conferences, healing conferences, conferences on going to the next level, conferences on, reading your Bible, just all kinds of different sermons and conferences and trainings and all of that, leadership conferences and leadership training. But I do not believe, or I cannot recall one single time that I've been to a conference on how to love well. I don't even really remember uh, hearing a lot of sermons about it or even giving a lot of sermons about how to love well. And yet, as we study in First John, this is all John talks about. And specifically in this text right here, chapter 3, verses 16 through 18, that first and foremost, that we know love by this, that Jesus sacrificed his life on our behalf. And he goes on to say that we ought to lay down our lives for the brethren. So love is sacrificial. Don't just say, I love you, show it. And not just show it by, bringing some food or a card or even giving money, but are you willing to lay down your life for the brethren? So Jesus' death on the cross demonstrates what real love is, and that is being willing to lay down our lives. It's a sacrificial action on your behalf for the benefit of other people. Now it does, and I'm not saying that we have to go out here and kill ourselves or find a way to die, but there are many times that we do need to sacrifice our comforts, our money, sacrifice our time, be willing to, I can't tell you the number of times where I've been so tired and somebody needed my help. Sometimes I gave in and sometimes I didn't. And again, I'm not saying every single time because you have to have boundaries. But what I am saying is that far too many of us are not sacrificial enough in our love, in our demonstration of love, because Jesus willingly laid down his life. And he said in John 15:13 that greater love has no one than this, that a person will lay down his life for his friends. That's real love. Jesus' death is an example of how we're to live, willingly sacrificing ourselves for the lives of others. And let me tell you, this is not easy. It's simple. It's a simple teaching. Greater love is no man than this, that a man will lay down his life for his friends. This is real love. Jesus died on the cross. This is how we know what real love is. Jesus died on the cross. That is so simple. Such a simple, easy message. But it's not easy to live out. It just isn't. And yet, Jesus' choice to die on the cross was not an easy decision for him to make. Do you remember the Garden of Gethsemane? 3 times he prays, Father, if it be your will, if there's any other way, let this cup pass from me. And all we get in the Gospels are just this little tiny short, couple of sentences about it. When in reality, I believe that Jesus struggled in prayer and he was begging the Father. I mean, there was such agony that his sweat became blood. And that's a real medical condition. And so we have to understand that, Jesus, as much as he loved us, he didn't want to die. He didn't want to have to go through, in his humanity, he didn't want to have to go through the pain and the torture and all that. 3 times he had to go before God to get himself prepared to do this. 3 times he had to lay down his will. I mean, how many times have we prayed for something and then walked away and maybe we went and picked it back up? Well, look at what Jesus did. Now, granted, I don't think any of us have ever faced anything as horrific as what Jesus was facing. But my point is that Jesus in his humanity had to go back to the Father 3 times before he was able to finally get to the place where he could do what the Father was asking him to do. That's love, and it was sacrifice, and it was not easy. So what this does is this teaches us that meeting needs shows God's love. You and I had a great need. We needed to be freed from our sin and delivered from death. And the only way for that to happen was for Jesus to die on the cross. Now, we are never going to be asked to die on the cross. Most of us never will. I don't believe that. Now, in other countries, they are killed, and many of them die for their faith. And there's been many Christians throughout the centuries that have had to die for their faith. I doubt very seriously that we in America will ever come to that point. But we can, and we should, and we're commanded to meet the needs of those around us. Because true love never comes without a struggle and without a sacrifice. We can preach all day long in our churches and teach in our Sunday schools and talk in our Bible study groups about how much we love people. We love people. We love the world. We just want to reach the world. That's a great idea, but how do we put that into practice? And John says here that you put that into practice by helping a brother or sister in need. Whoever has the world's goods, food, money, clothing, shelter, material possessions, and sees his brother in need and closes his heart against him, how does the love of God abide in him? Now, granted, John is writing in a different time frame than what we live in today. And people did not have nearly the amount that we have today. But at the same time, we still deal with abject poverty in a lot of countries of the world. And even in America, there's still poverty. There's still issues that are going on. Now, at the same time, I also know there's a lot of scammers out there. And there's a lot of people that will stand at Walmart with a sign that says, we'll work for food, God bless you, and they have no intentions of working for food. They're panhandling. They're just doing it because they know people will feel sorry and they'll make money. Sometimes it's really hard to know where the difference is, but that's where we need the Spirit of God to lead us, guide us, and direct us. The true test of love is always the willingness to sacrifice. Are we willing to sacrifice what we have to share with others in need? Are we willing to go the extra mile? Do we trust the Father that if we give, not expecting anything in return, but that God will take care of us? See, I was just having this conversation with our Bible study group last night. Actually, we were talking about giving and how that many, especially in the charismatic movement, we've been conditioned to give to get. Now, we'll sit there from a pulpit taking up an offering. Now, we don't give to get, but we do. The way that we're taught to give is that if you give this, God will give it back. You can't outgive God. So the essence is if you give, God will give you back greater. And sometimes that does happen. Sometimes the Lord will ask you to give things up to see if you're willing to sacrifice them. And it may not come back to you in the same way. Now, sometimes we give out of guilt and manipulation, and we're not going to get blessed by that because we gave out of the wrong motives. God loves a cheerful giver. If you're giving out of guilt and manipulation and you don't know how to say no, then you need some self-controls to learn some discipline. We've all been there, at different times. Well, maybe not all of us, but a lot of us have been there. And so, we have to understand that there is a sacrifice in giving, but there's no manipulation or control in giving. Victor Hugo said, you can give without loving, but you can never love without giving. So if you love people, you will be a giver. You'll be looking for needs. You'll be at least aware and open to God that if God says, meet this need, then we would meet it, that we would do it. But I'll be honest with you, this verse is a hard one for me. This verse is hard because I am not a giving person by nature. I guess I tend to be, and I hate to admit it, I'm putting this out there on the internet, is I tend to be a bit more selfish than I do giving. And I don't like that about myself. So the way I'm overcoming that is I force myself to give. I give to break that selfishness that's within me. And some of it just comes from growing up poor. I didn't have a lot. And so I kind of held on to what I did have, always afraid that I wouldn't have any more, or when I would get money, I would immediately spend it to get what I wanted because I didn't get what I wanted very often. We have to understand that it's our responsibility as Christians to take care of one another. It is our responsibility not to turn a blind eye to a fellow believer. And we shouldn't turn our blind eye to those in need in the world either. But John specifically says if we see a brother in need, that we close our heart to him. How is that godly? How is that Christ-like? John goes on to say very strongly, how can the love of God be in you if that's what you do? Because see, love is not an abstract theory. It can't be in the abstract. Love has to manifest itself into into the natural world. In other words, love has to have action to it. Actions speak louder than words. And you can't just say, I love you. You have to be able to show it. The world will never buy the fact that we love them if we are not willing to show them. And how do you show them? You meet them at their point of need. When you meet someone at their point of need, that speaks volumes to them. Because it's easy for us to go out into the world and tell the world what we need. Oh, come to our church. Come listen to us preach. Come, join our group, whatever. It's another thing to go out into the world to find the people where they are and to meet their need where they are and to say, we don't want anything from you. We don't want a thing from you. You want to come to our church, great. If you don't, great. If you want to go to somebody else's church, we don't care. We just want to bless you. We want to honor you. We want to meet you at your point of need. Matter of fact, Jesus said that when you give, don't expect anything in return. Just give it. I can't tell you the number of times I've had friends, Christian friends, say, "Oh, Michael, can I borrow some money? I promise I'll pay you back next week, or I'll pay you back my first paycheck, or whatever." And you know what? I just give it. If I've got it, I'll give it. And I'm not expecting anything in return. Now, I do wish, honestly, I wish they wouldn't tell me that they'll pay it back, because then that sets them up to be a liar. And I don't want my friends to be liars. But I know why we do it, because we feel bad asking for help. So we think that if we say, well, can I borrow it? We're softening it. I would much rather my friend say, look, I'm in need. Can you help me? And just leave it at that. But instead, we try to make ourselves feel better because we're prideful and we don't, we want to protect our egos. But love in word only is not love. Love must be shown in action. Love must be practiced. We have to learn to love well. John says that we have to learn in deed and in truth. Now, all of us, we love because love is instinctive to us, but really and truthfully, we tend to love those that are there for us. We tend to love those that love us back. We tend to love those that we're comfortable with. And John goes on to say, and Jesus for sure says, that, we're to love our enemies. We are to love those people that despitefully use us. If you're a Republican, you're required to love Democrats. And if you're a Democrat, you're required to love Republicans if you are a follower of Christ. I don't see that. I don't see that happening. I don't see denominations loving other denominations. I don't see one church loving another church. As a matter of fact, I can't tell you the amount of division that I see in churches. And it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart for all the divisions that I've caused through the years and all the divisions I've had in my own mind through the years. Why? Because John tells us this is the message you've heard from the beginning. This is the demonstration of what love is. Jesus died on the cross for us. And then we ought to be willing to lay down our lives for others. We at least ought to be able to meet other people's needs, not cause division, not question whether they're worth it, but to just love them where they are, because that's exactly what Jesus did for us. He loved us right where we were. Did not expect us to come up to his level, did not expect us to get it right, did not expect us to be perfect. He came down to our level, did not demand to be right. He valued relationship with us over his need or his ability to be right. It's one of the beautiful things about God. It makes God, it's where I believe God is humble, because God is the ultimate rightness. He is the ultimate source of right, what is right. And yet he laid that aside to live as you and I, to live as humanity, and to die in our place. It's powerful. And that's the example that John's giving, that if Jesus, who is fully God, was able and willing to do that, how much more should we be willing to lay down our lives and meet the needs of other people? Again, I find this hard sometimes, but it's where it's really at. And it's the true test of our love and commitment to Jesus. So I hope this has helped you. This is episode number 15. And again, this is what we are studying at Renovatus Church, which is the group that I lead. We're in the process of putting together a core group so we can start a church. And it's going to be a church for misfits, dreamers, and the discontent. Misfits are those people that just don't feel like they fit in anywhere. But Renovatus is going to be a place where everyone has equal access at the table. Then we're looking for dreamers, people that dream of a better life, that things can be better, and they dream of ways to make things better. And then also, we want it to be a church full of the discontent, people that are just not satisfied with life. They know there's more. They want the more. And not necessarily the more in the supernatural, but just more out of life, which sometimes comes through learning to find God in the mundane. But Renovatus, it's Latin for Renew, Revive, Restore. We're really excited. So if you're in the West Tennessee area, specifically the Dyersburg, Tennessee area, we'd love to have you come be a part or check us out, or even just talk to us about it. We meet most every Sunday nights. I don't want to say every Sunday because we don't meet every Sunday, but most Sundays out of the month we meet 6 p.m. and currently we're meeting at my home. It's a great time. It's a judgment-free, very safe place to explore our Christianity, explore the goodness of God and how much He loves us. So you can go to our website, renovatus.org. That's renovatus.org. Find out more information, get our address, be able to contact us. But until next time, I pray that you will learn to love